I'd like to thank all of you for coming this evening. Excuse me. I'd like to start off by thanking the person that sent me this this photo. It seems to be becoming a tradition that that people are sending me their pictures, and then I'm incorporating them into the talk, which I appreciate. A lot of people have some great photos out there, and so thank you very much. Tonight we're going to be talking about installing a package of bees. I'm going to focus mostly on packages as a method of starting a colony as opposed to a nucleus hive. And what is the difference between a nucleus hive and a package of bees? A nucleus hive is just that. It's a small hive. It consists usually of 5 frames, although you can get 2 frames or 3 frame nukes, but usually they're 5 frames, and the queen is free to run around that colony on those frames. She's laying, so you've got bees in various stages of development. You've got eggs, you've got larvae, you've got capped brood, but you don't know where that queen is inside the box, inside the nuke box. As opposed to a package where the bees are in a box, the queen is kept separate in a separate cage. You know that where she is, but there is no brood. So in terms of speed of buildup, a nucleus hive certainly, without a doubt, will build faster, strengthen faster than a package of bees, because essentially from day one, you're going to have new bees emerging from a nucleus hive, whereas you're looking at best about 4 weeks with a package before you see new bees emerging into that colony. So if we were to start a nuke today and a package today, the nuke would grow much faster than that package. All that said, I do prefer packages for folks that are just getting started. And the reason for that is you can sort of control the situation a little bit more. It's you can control the bees, you know where your queen is, and it's a little bit easier, I think, for folks that have never done this sort of thing before to deal with a package as opposed to a nuke. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue on. So let's get started. Let's take a look at what we're thinking about for the evening, what we're hoping to cover here. Of course, the preparation, getting ready for the package, getting ready for the installation. We'll cover how you get the bees from the package, from the box that they are in, into your hive. How do you get all those bees? A 3-pound package has about 12,000 bees. It's a lot of bees to transfer from one box to another. How do you install the queen? How do you make sure that she's positioned well and to ensure the best possible results in terms of her release? How do we do that? We'll cover that. We'll talk a little bit about feeding. The long and the short with feeding is feed, feed, feed until they don't take it anymore or until you're ready to add a honey super. And then we'll talk a little bit about post-installation inspections. And now, of course, post-installation inspections, in theory, we could talk all summer long about inspections. But we're just going to focus on the few visits that occur a few weeks after the package has been installed, and we'll get you up and running in that sense. So let's get into this. When should the package be installed? In fact, I've already had a question that's asked. It's forecasted for rain. What should I do? Rain is actually not a bad time to install a package of bees. The bees are less inclined to fly in rainy weather, so they'll hunker down. They'll stay within the hive. They'll begin to work on, if it's a brand new hive, they'll begin to work on drawing comb, getting to task in establishing their new home. So rain is not a bad thing. It may be a little unpleasant for us, but in terms of installing bees, rain is just fine. If you've got a forecast for extended periods of cold, that might be an issue. And by cold, I mean 40 degrees or less. because what will happen is the bees will cluster. And if you've got brand new frames with no drawn comb, no stored honey or syrup, they don't have a food source then. They've clustered, and they've clustered around a bare sheet of foundation. And even if you're feeding them, if they're clustered, they're not going to access the feeder. So extended periods of cold may be a problem. If that's the forecast, try and get a frame of honey to install with that package. You can spray the foundation down with a thick sugar water solution, so when they cluster on the frame, they at least have a little bit of sugar to consume. You can try and hold the package until weather breaks. You can't hold these things indefinitely. I would say absolutely no more than a few days. If you picked them up from a source, if you've had them mail ordered, you should get them in right away. But to hold them, you just want to keep them in a cool, dark place and mist them down with a little bit of water occasionally, so they've got something to drink. And I mentioned mail order bees right there, and what I would say about mail order bees is that's the only option for a lot of folks. So if that's the only option, then that's what you've got to do. But I would strongly encourage you to try and find a local source for your bees. It's much better to pick them up from someone that's having them trucked in rather than having them sent through the postal stream. A lot of postal workers, not intentionally, of course, but they have an aversion to bees, as many people do, and they see this package coming through the postal stream and it doesn't get treated as it should. And so even if it arrives in seemingly good health, it may be unduly stressed and not perform as it should. So that's a little bit more thorough on when to install the package, but also make sure you've got everything you need. This seems to be rather common sense, but it often can be a problem, and it's happened to me. You get out there, you get halfway through the process, and you realize you've forgotten something. Take the time at the beginning, before you even start, to think through the process and make sure you've got all the pieces of equipment that you're going to need to go from start to finish. So make sure you've got everything you need. And make sure your hive is set up in advance. You don't want to try and be putting things together while installing a package of bees. So make sure that you're ready to go before you even start. Let's take a look at this picture. Here we've got the hive prepared. Here's, of course, my package. This is a 3-pound package with a marked queen. Behind the package right here is my sprayer. What I've got there is a couple tablespoons of sugar dissolved in warm water. Typically in spring you want a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar to water. I don't necessarily concern myself with making sure I've got that concentration in my spray bottle. I just want it to be a little sticky. In fact, if you make it too thick, sometimes the spray bottles have a difficult time pumping it. So all you need is a couple of tablespoons just to sweeten it up, just to make it a little sticky, so that when you mist the bees down, it makes them less likely to fly. I've got, of course, a hive. This is an 8-frame medium hive. I've pulled out 4 frames. Here are those 4 frames just set to the side to create space where I'm going to dump my bees. Also notice I've got my entrance reduced. That's very important. This is going to be a relatively weak colony, so by reducing the entrance, it makes it easier for them to defend the colony, and also reduces the likelihood of robbing, because I'm going to be feeding. Right here's my entrance feeder. You want to feed a package to ensure that they've got the resources they need. I've got my inner cover, of course, and over here, off to the side, I've got my telescoping top. Now, one question that we often get is, with our IPM bottom boards, our screen bottom boards, should I have it open or closed? Generally speaking, I have my bottom boards open all the time, even through winter, except for when I want to monitor my mite drop, or when I'm installing a new package of bees. Again, I want to try and restrict a lot of the airflow through the colony so that this colony can grow and strengthen. And you can see that I've got my sheet into the bottom of the hive right there, so that that IPM bottom board is closed. Okay, so I've got everything I need ready to go. So let's talk about the actual process of installing the bees. I've got my water bottle, my sprayer. I'm spraying the bees down through the screen. Both sides, you can see that most of the bees are sort of clustered along like this across and clinging to the top of the package. You can see the can of sugar water that they've got in there, and the queen, you can't really see her. She's obscured by the bees. She's hanging right here. You can take this package and bump it down, and what will happen are all these bees will drop to the bottom, and you can continue to miss them. Again, the sugar water just covers the bees. It makes them a little sticky, so when you open this package up, you don't get 12,000 bees flying up out of this package. This is what I meant earlier by you can sort of control the situation a little bit. You can never control the bees, but you can control the situation a little bit. And by spraying them down, you help reduce the amount of flying that they can do. It makes it much easier for someone just getting started and who's never been around bees to work with 12,000 bees for the first time. Also, or I guess in conjunction with that, with a nucleus hive, a nuke, you cannot spray the bees down. What you have to do with those is you've got to pull a frame out because you don't have access to spraying the bees unless you remove a frame. And at that point now, you've already pulled it up out of the box. The bees are airborne, and so spraying's not going to do any good. Also, again, I know that my queen is right here, suspended, so I don't have to worry about accidentally injuring her as I'm pulling a frame out of the nuke box, or accidentally leaving her behind in the nuke box as I'm transferring my frames to the new hive. Now, I'm sort of emphasizing packages here. I should say that nukes are probably more readily available on a local basis than packages. And so nukes might be your only option. And if I had my choice between a mail order package or a nuke, I would opt for the nuke. Even though, again, I'm saying packages I think are easier, I'd much prefer to get a local bees and not have them stressed by going through the mail stream than to try and make things easier for my life, in my life. So we'll continue on. Oops. Here I am removing this wooden plate. Keep this wooden plate handy. You can use it to seal the package back up again if you need to. You'll notice that the package is still sealed by the can of sugar water. It forms a tight seal in the top board here. Bees cannot escape. This one right here is just a freeloader. So the can seals the package still. So even though I'm pulling this wooden board off with my hive tool right here, it's still sealed. But keep this plate handy if you need to. If the anxiety level begins to rise, perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. You can simply put this wooden plate back over the top of the package to seal it. If you've already removed the can, the package will be open, but you can just use this wooden plate to seal this opening again, walk away, collect yourself, and you can come back and continue once the anxiety is alleviated. Notice this strap right here, this plastic strap extending off. That is a plastic strap that is suspending the queen cage. In fact, right here you can see a little bit of the wood of the queen cage that's suspending right here. So the strap comes in, goes alongside the can, and then is stapled to the side of the queen cage. We need to keep the queen separate in a package because the queen in this cage came from a different hive than all of these bees. So if they just simply threw the queen in there free, these bees would not recognize her as their own, and they would kill her. But by putting her in a separate cage, they are becoming acclimated, because these are queenless, unless they've accidentally shaken a queen in, which they try not to do. So they're becoming acclimated to this queen while in the package, and also will keep this queen in this cage after we install them, so that acclimation period continues. You may, depending on the source of your bees, may have a slightly different method than a plastic strap like this. Some use a metal washer that's stapled into the top of the hive, and there's a little notch in the top right here. But essentially, somehow the queen is usually suspended in the package. All right. So now here I am removing the can of sugar water. I've got my wooden plate handy, so that once I pull this can up, I can just simply cover this hole back up with that wooden plate. Again, just to seal it up so the bees don't begin to walk out on me. You'll notice now, too, that most of the bees are now at the bottom of the package. So I've misted them down, and I have bumped this package, like I said you could do, and knocked all the bees from the top down to the bottom. Of course, there are still some hanging on, but for the most part, all the bees are down here, again, making it easier to sort of handle this package, handle these bees. So I'm removing the can. This will be, without a doubt, one of the hardest things you'll be doing. The can is a tight fit around this wood. You can't get a grip on the upper rim. You need to pry it up with a hive tool. Some people have high-powered magnets that stick to the top of the can and can lift it out, but sometimes that won't work, because you'll have bees building comb or beginning to build comb on the sides, making it an even tighter fit. So you've got to sort of shear that wax off as you're pulling out the can. This is a real it's one of the greatest frustrations sometimes of getting a package installed. It's just simply getting this can out. But once I do, I can put this wooden plate back over the cover, over the hole, until I'm ready to continue on. Okay, I've got the can out. Here's the can. Here's the queen sitting next to the can. Again, I'm misting the bees. They're towards the bottom of the package, but I'm spraying now down through the access hole, and I can sort of slosh them around a little bit and continue to moisten them. Again, reducing the amount of bees that are flying. If we look in this photo, there's not a whole lot of bees in the air. I'll show you a video in just a second. You'll see some flying around, but given that there are 12,000 in this package, the amount of bees that are out flying around are very, very few. So I'm misting them down, and the next step is to actually get the bees from this package into this space in my hive. And people always say, well, what do? You just dump them in? And yes, you literally simply dump the bees into the hive. And I've got a video of that so that you can actually see that process. Let me just bring it up here. So here we are. This is, you can see the can of sugar water over here. I've just bumped them. Let's see that again. Let's go back and let's see that again. So there are some bees at the top. You can see some fell down. Most of them were at the bottom. You bump them. You spray them. You want to try and get as many bees as possible. There's no doubt about it that this is an expensive package of bees, and you want to get as many as you can. So now I'm turning it upside down and literally shaking it back and forth, tapping the ends. What will happen is the bees will, let me see if I can pause this here. Oops, where's my mouse? Let me just go back a little bit. Come back here. What will happen is by tapping the ends of the package, the bees will sort of roll across the opening, dropping out in. I'll continue. I'll tap turn the package the other way and they'll roll back. Again, you want to get as many as possible out of this package. And when I'm done with this package, you'll see the hive is a little higher off the ground than I'd like, but yours probably won't be this high. And you can set the package right in front of the hive. There we go. I'm just setting it right in front of the hive. And generally speaking, if you lean the package up against the entrance here, they will walk out and in to the colony over the next hour or so. You want to get as many out as possible. You don't want to leave a lot in that package, but a few that may be remaining will walk out, but try and get as many as possible because some of the ones that are in that package might not make it into the hive. And so if you leave too many in there, you're only weakening the colony, which is already considered a weak colony with just 12,000 bees. So make sure you get as many as possible. Also, I'll point out earlier when I was talking about timing of installing a package of bees, I talked about rain and cold a little bit, but I didn't talk about if it were a sunny day like this one. If it's a sunny day like this one, I'd prefer to wait later in the day. We needed the light here to be able to video, of course, but towards dusk is better, not dark. Before, I would say before dusk, but later in the day is better because, again, the bees will sort of be confined to the hive by the darkness. You don't want to ever confine the bees, lock them in, but the darkness will essentially do that for you. And so, again, they sort of get to work in the hive. They're in there all night long, and then the next day they can come out on an orienting flight and go off and start foraging. So later in the day is better if it's a sunny day like this one. Okay, let's just watch this one more time. It's just about 40 seconds or so, and then we'll go back to the slides. So I'm spraying down into the center. Making sure they're good and wet. You can see that there's just a few bees flying around. Not a whole lot. Most of them are confined to the package by moistening them with the sugar water, dumping them in, tapping the package, getting them to roll back and forth across that opening, making sure you get as many as possible. Again, the package, no doubt about it, they're pricey, so you want to get as much out of it as you can. Let's see here. There we go. So that's how you get them from your package to your hive. Now, what do you do with the queen? This is my preferred method, and I think most of you have not installed a package before. Most of you will be starting with new equipment. And so this is the sort of situation that you're going to find yourself in. You're going to find yourself with brand new frames and brand new foundation. This is a medium frame with wax foundation that's been wired. It's crimp wire foundation. That's what these little vertical lines are. Those are the wires that are embedded in the wax. So this is my preferred method. A rubber band wrapped around the frame, and it just sort of goes over top of the cage like this. So this is my queen cage. You will notice a few things about this queen cage. First, notice that I've sort of got these holes. There's one, there's two, and up here is a third. This is called a 3-hole queen cage. And this third one up here is filled with a white substance. This is candy, essentially. And this white substance, this candy, is what will allow for a slow release queen introduction. There is a cork at this end of the cage. You want to pull that cork, and only the cork from the candy end. There is a cork down here, but you do not want to remove that cork. If you remove this cork, you're creating what we call a direct release. There's nothing to prevent that queen from just coming right out of the cage. So you do not again, you do not want to remove this cork. You do want to remove the cork from this end. And what that does is now with this cage in my hive and this cork pulled, the attendants that are in with the queen can eat from the inside out, and all the bees that were with the package can eat from the outside in. And over a period of about 5 to 7 days, they will chew through that candy and allow the queen to be released. And over that 5 to 7 day period, the bees are going to become acclimated to the new queen and accept her as their own. So you do not want to direct release the queen. If you do, you're running the risk of her being balled. In other words, they literally form a ball around her and kill her. So you want the slow release method. Also notice that the candy end is facing up. Always put the candy end up. The reason for that, there are attendant bees in with the queen. It's not uncommon for one or several of these attendant queens to die. And if they do, you want them to fall away from the exit hole, which is up here. If I had this the other way around, they could potentially fall and obstruct the exit. So put the candy end up, so if one of these attendant bees dies, they do not obstruct the exit and prevent that queen from leaving the cage. Okay, so candy end up, only remove the plug from the cork from the candy end. This is the best way to, I think, install a queen. When you come back 5 to 7 days later, you can just take a pocket knife and cut this elastic, or use your Hive tool to sort of sever this elastic. Otherwise, you can slide it off the end, but the problem with sliding it off the end is that you'll sort of be squeegeeing off all the bees between the elastic and the end bar as you're trying to remove it. It's much easier just to cut it, and then you can remove that queen cage. Okay? This is just one method of installing a queen. Another is the use of a queen introduction cage. And this would take the place of a frame. You can see it's got the ears. This would take the place of a frame. It's got all of this screened area that the queen will be released into. And what you can do with this is put your wooden queen cage right here. And in this case, I would pull the cork from the non-candy end so that she can walk right into this portion. So essentially, you're just taking her from this little cage and putting her in this bigger cage. And it gives her more space to move around. It allows her to interact with more bees in the hive. It allows for the spread of her pheromone, her scent, to be disseminated through the hive a little bit more readily. This, essentially, is your candy. This is a wooden plug that goes into the top and seals her in. So instead of waiting for 5 to 7 days for them to consume the candy and be released, you're releasing her into this. You're going to wait 5 to 7 days and then come and pull this plug and allow her to come out. And this right here is just another hole that is a holder, so that when you pull the plug out, you just transfer it over here. So it's not dangling in the hive. So that's another method of installing the queen. This is, if you've got drawn comb, that is the best thing you can do for a colony, is give them drawn comb. In this case, I've got some honey even, so they can get right to work. The queen, once she's released, immediately can begin laying in these cells. And so if I've got this sort of situation, what I'll do is I'll just simply press the queen cage into the wax foundation, and the wax usually is sufficient glue, essentially, to hold the queen cage in place. Again, I've got my candy end up. I pulled the cork from this end, and in fact, you can still see a little bit of the cork sticking out right there on the other end. So I've not, again, I cannot stress this enough. This is one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're first getting started. You do not want to pull the cork from the non-candy end. You only want to pull the cork from the candy end. Okay? And in fact, over here you can see that's the hole with the candy exposed. Note that it's got enough clearance from the top bar that the bees are able to come in and actually access it. If I press this up tight against the foundation, I may obstruct a little too much of that hole. You want to make sure the bees have access to that hole so that they can chew through that candy to release the queen. Okay, so now I've got my queen all squared away. I've got my bees. I've got my bees in the hive. Now I'm going to replace the frames that I had setting over here when I began. I'm going to put those back into the colony. You'll notice right here that the frames are sort of standing up a little bit. Well, I just dumped 3 pounds of bees into that space, so there's a big wet mound of bees down there. And that big wet mound of bees is going to sort of hold the frames up off the bottom a bit. Do not, in a frenzied state, start slamming these frames down just to close up the hive and get out of there. Because if I were to do that by slamming these frames down, I'd be squishing these bees against the screened bottom board. I'd be making bee French fries by pressing them through the screen. So just slowly set them in. What will happen is the pressure, the natural weight of the frame will be sufficient. The bees will sort of slowly move out of the way and they'll settle into place. And this one right here is the one that's got my queen cage on it, the one that I'm installing right now, the one that I'm putting in last right here. If you have a gloved hand, before you put these frames in, you can sort of smooth the mound of bees out a little bit so that when you put the frames in, they will sit down in place. If you're comfortable doing that, that's just fine. I've got my feeder. I will be feeding these bees until they stop taking my syrup or until I'm adding a honey super onto this hive. I've got my reducer in place so that I don't get bees from other colonies robbing this one out, attempting to access this feeder or attempting to access any of the honey that these bees are bringing in. And what I'm going to do now is just close it up. Just put the cover back on, and now the natural tendency is to go back the next day. So I've been finished installing my bees, and it's tomorrow now, and I want to go take a look. I'm going to crack the cover and just peek in, make sure everything's going all right. Give the bees time. Be patient. The less you disturb them, the better off they're going to be. So you don't want to go back to that colony after you install them for at least 5 to 7 days. You're going to go back 5 to 7 days later after you've installed that package to make sure that your queen has been released from the cage. If she's been released from the cage, you can then remove the queen cage. If she has not been released, you can take a stick and poke a small hole in the candy to allow a little bit easier time for the bees to clear it out. By creating that hole, they're more apt to sort of chew through it a little more quickly. But then just leave it there for a few more days and then go back and chances are she'll be released. More often than not, after 5 to 7 days, she is released into the colony. And so if that's the case, you remove that queen cage, you're going to close that hive up again. Don't go on a hunt to find the queen. That's a disruptive event for the colony. Just get the queen cage out and close it up again. Now you're going back 1 week later. Now you're looking to make sure that the queen is laying. The queens that come with packages generally are mated queens, so once she's released, it might take her a day or so to get up and running, but she should begin laying almost immediately. So you go back a week later, the bees will have sufficient comb drawn, and the queen should be laying that you should see eggs from that queen. So you go back a week later, look for eggs. If you see those eggs, again, you're done. You're going to close up that hive. You're not going to start a hunt for the queen. Seeing eggs at the bottom of a cell standing on end is an excellent sign that your colony is queen right, that there is a queen present. If you see multiple eggs stuck to the side of a cell, which generally you don't see with a new package, if you're seeing multiple eggs stuck to the side of a cell, that's a sign of a laying worker, and that usually happens in a colony after the queen has been killed for whatever reason, and it usually takes about a month after a colony has been queenless before you see the emergence of a laying worker. So you're not going to see that off the bat, but you want to see those eggs, and that's a good sign that you've got a queen. So now you've seen eggs, you're closing up that hive. Again, you want to be patient. You want to give these bees all the opportunity to grow and expand and strengthen their numbers. So what I would suggest, now we're basically 2 weeks after our initial installation. I would wait about another 2 weeks to go back and check to see if it's ready to add another story. And if you're using 8-frame equipment, I usually wait until there's about 6 frames being worked by the bees, and then I'll take the 2 outer frames and jump them in just 1 frame position. Don't take those outer frames and put them right smack dab in the center of the hive, because you'll divide your brood nest in half, and that creates more work for the bees. Just jump those outer frames in 1 position, and then you can add another story. Wait until they've got about 6 frames being worked, jump the 2 outer ones in, and add another story. And you can continue on in that manner until you're adding honey supers, and you would add honey supers the same way. Now, someone asked earlier about queen excluders. Should you use a queen excluder? Let me go back to this, and first off, I've got them just in 1 box. You don't want to give them too much space, because they'll just simply come right up the center of the hive. They won't work toward the edges. You want to get them to work toward the edges. So confine them in 1 box. Wait until they've got 6 frames worked. Then you can jump those outers in. If you're working with 10-frame equipment, wait until they've got 8 frames worked. Then jump the outer 2 frames in position. Add your stories, but these are just brood chambers at this point. And so you don't want to add a queen excluder at this point, but once you get to the point where you're going to add honey supers, if you're starting with brand new equipment, which many of you are, I do not recommend the use of a queen excluder right off the bat. The reason being is that bees are generally reluctant to pass through a queen excluder if there's only foundation above them. Now, if there's drawn comb above the excluder, they pass right through it without a problem. But if you've got brand new equipment, they may not pass through that excluder to get to new foundation. So just put your honey super on, leave it there for a week or so. The bees will go up there, they'll start drawing comb, they'll start storing nectar. Maybe the queen will go up there and begin laying. That's okay, it's not the end of the world. Then once that has happened, once they've begun working those frames, then you can slip your queen excluder in. Just make sure that you have not trapped your queen above the queen excluder. But now, with those frames being worked, they'll pass through that queen excluder very, very readily and work that honey super. Some people call queen excluders honey excluders. I haven't experienced that. When used correctly, I've not noticed any significant difference in honey production with a hive that's got an excluder versus one that has not. Admittedly, I've never actually weighed my supers and done a real formal comparison, but anecdotally, sort of casual observation, I haven't seen the difference. All right. So now we'll open it up for questions. Whoops, and see what people have here. So let me see what we've got going.